Let's love people.
Read about Jehovah's Witnesses.
Our nation needs to stop doing for people what they can and should do for themselves.
How about Buddhism?
Income inequality is one of the biggest issues out there in America.
Try to explain where we are, how we got there.
The redliners, the vultures, they're just rolling.
But we have to face the truth.
Pope Francis says free market capitalism is a form of dictatorship. He says it devours human beings and the environment. Here's my take. I disagree with His Holiness.
You're going up against the Pope? You're going up against the Pope on how to help the poor?
The fact that he's attacked the idolatry of money, or that fact that he's blasted trickle-down economics, that is what makes the right so uncomfortable. He's putting poor people on the forefront of discussion.
And I look at capitalism as something that has generated more wealth and changed more lives for the better than any other economic system. But that doesn't mean that there's not a place in it to regulate it. That doesn't mean that there's not a humanity that needs to operate within it. And I think the Pope's reminded of that. So I don't see this as an attack on the existing system, but I see it as a very useful corrective and a call for us to be better people.
One of the hot topics that's being discussed today is economics. And with all of this discussion, we have an important question to ask. Is capitalism biblical? If there's one great area of confusion today in the world, I think it would come down to the whole understanding of what is the correct or right economic system. Some people talk about capitalism. Some people talk about communism. Other people talk about socialism. And even in the church, this is a hot topic today, as the Pope has recently made a number of comments about capitalism, communism, and economic justice. Now, as believers in this hour, is there anything that the Lord wants us to understand about this issue? Is there any truly biblically correct system that most reflects what God is looking for? Well, if we go into this subject, what we find is that one of the great passages in the Bible that talks about this is Matthew chapter 25. And while Matthew 25 doesn't talk about socialism or communism or capitalism, it does talk about stewardship. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. And the man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 more. So also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. But the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. And his master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvested where I had not sown, and gathered where I had not scattered seed. Well then, you should have at least put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest." And in this passage from Matthew 25, we see the foundation of biblical economics. And it's not rooted in a particular system that people come up with, but it's rooted in a freedom that everyone has before the Lord. Because in the story, we clearly see that the master is the Lord. He is the one that gives the talents out to people. The talents don't come from the government. The talents don't come from other people. They ultimately come from what is given to an individual through the work that they do. And as they work and invest and do things, everybody's different. Some people get 5 talents, some people get 2 talents, some people get 1 talent. But the important point is that we are all different. And we have to recognize that any economic system that tries to make everybody the same or tries to be the government as ultimately the master is a system that really violates biblical economics. Because the Lord wants us to have freedom. Freedom of our conscience, freedom to be able to do the things with our work and with our money and with our talents to ultimately bring honor and glory in Him. And perhaps the most important thing that could be said at this hour is we need a system of economics that ultimately comes back to a recognition that all of this world and all of its property and all of its wealth belongs to the Lord. Is that capitalistic? Ultimately, it comes down to being biblical. And while the concept of capitalism does allow for freedom, we have to recognize that no system in this world is ultimately going to perfectly reflect the Lord. And so instead of looking at capitalism as being biblical, what we ultimately need to see is that God's system is one in which He is Lord of all and gives us the freedom to invest and operate as He so leads. May all of us find that biblical economic system, and may we bring it to our culture and our society for His honor and glory.